We pick up tonight where we started last night with the New York Times investigation into Homeland Security's covert surveillance of activists and what they call left-leaning groups during Operation Metro Surge. Thanks for watching Breaking the News. I'm Janice Shortle. So within the last 48 hours, new details from government documents are revealing how far this surveillance went, from infiltrating group chats to obtaining financial records. So how did federal officials justify all of that? Gordon's been checking that out.
During Operation Metro Surge, a lot of the protesters suspected that federal agents were hiding among them, monitoring their movements in the crowd. These documents seem to confirm that was happening, and that agents went much further by infiltrating union meetings and digging up financial records, with many now questioning, did the federal government cross a line? Newly released court documents reveal strategies federal agents used during Operation Metro Surge to investigate protesters and the groups they were involved with. These documents were discovered by a defense attorney for one of the 15 people who were arrested in June, accused of interfering with law enforcement agents, as explained by U.S. Attorney from Minnesota Daniel Rosen.
They all joined an agreement, a conspiracy, to interfere with lawful immigration enforcement operations.
The documents show federal agents engaged in two undercover operations, Project Whipple Shield and Operation Puppet Master, where they investigated 18 groups, including some of the largest labor unions and nonprofits in Minnesota, including the AFL-CIO, the SEIU, which represents government and service workers, and the Minneapolis Federation of Educators.
Federal agents were infiltrating a lot of these meetings and infiltrating Zoom conversations among activists.
Ernesto Londoño wrote about these documents in a New York Times article this week. The documents explained how agents would often go undercover, posing as protesters or members of these groups to gain information. Documents also showed the Department of Homeland Security filed several subpoenas to dig up financial records from these groups to see if the groups were financially supporting violent protesters.
We've heard from unions, we've heard from nonprofits who had their financial records sought and looked at, calling this a very clear overreach, calling this an abuse of power.
In a statement, the AFL-CIO said, "We are, quote, being targeted simply because our state's labor movement stood in solidarity with our immigrant union members." The Minneapolis Federation of Educators also responded, saying, quote, "Our union has apparently been included in another politically motivated investigation," arguing they were simply exercising their rights to peacefully protest, and they will continue to do so.
This is something that I am very concerned about.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is deeply disturbed by the information in these documents. He wants to know more about how federal agents were tracking various groups in Minnesota to see if the government broke the law.
If all those things are true, I think there could very well have been some violations of our constitutional rights.
The defense attorney who first uncovered these documents is also looking for more information, filing a motion for more documents and insight into how his client was being tracked by the government and whether the charges against him should be dropped.
The real question, I think, is how the federal bench is going to respond to these revelations, how the judges overseeing these cases are going to weigh the arguments.
This afternoon, a judge agreed with the defense attorney in this case that the federal government must respond to their request for more information by next Friday. I also reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice, but I have not received a response.
And Gordon, we were reporting last night, in addition, that attorney for one of these 15 protesters that was named in U.S. Attorney Rosen's complaint, he wants the case to be kicked out because of this, right?
That's the argument they appear to be making. Ellison was, really, didn't want to go to that point to say that this should be thrown out or that this was unlawful. He's kind of in this information gathering stage. I think he really wants to read through some more of these court documents before he really determines what he's going to do, because he may decide to do something as the Attorney General here in Minnesota.
Right, that's a good point. Best to get through all those documents and get more information first. Well, we'll stay on that story next week. We appreciate it, Gordon.